are live, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. We're also simulcasting the radio show live right now in living color at prisonplanet.tv. It is Thursday, the 5th day of November, 2009. And for the next 20 minutes or so, Congressman Ron Paul joins us from Capitol Hill. And there is a lot to talk about today. First off, out of the gates, you obviously got 290-plus sponsors to begin the audit of the private secretive Federal Reserve. You've talked this week about some maneuvers by some of the committee chairmen to gut the bill. Can you give us an update on where your legislation is going, Congressman?
Well, actually, right now we have 309, and that's 130-some Democrats, as well as all the Republicans. And at one time, Mel Watt had indicated to me that he would get a provision put in the bill by Barney Frank, which would be a very, very limited version of an audit, which would be a distraction, if nothing else. Even though the little bit what he was doing, it was okay. It was just so small, it was canceling out most of what I wanted to do. But his provision didn't get put into the bill. We are now in the middle of doing the bill. I thought there was even a chance today that I would get to offer my amendment, which is 1207, to the bill. But it was just announced a few minutes ago that Barney Frank said that, well, the controversial type of amendments won't be done until after the Labor Day or the Veterans Day break, which is next week. So it won't be this week and it won't be next week, but the following week. I suspect they're just lining up their ducks, and there'll probably be lots of attempts to water things down. But I don't know. But we'll have to wait and see. So we're in the middle of it. We're coming close to at least a initial climax of the bill on what the Banking Committee will do. And it has to survive there and has to come out there pretty whole, or things won't look so good for us. But I'm cautiously optimistic about it.
But the momentum's clearly shifted. 20-something years ago, you might get 2 or 3 co-sponsors. Now you have over 300, a giant House majority. So the momentum is shifting against the secretive organization. Yeah,
and if we can get a clean vote, I can't imagine very many wanting to be on record to vote against this. It just is going to give them a lot of grief, especially.
Congressman? Okay. Phone system glitch. We will get Congressman Ron Paul back on with us in just a moment. Tell you, we got gremlins in our phone system, or the congressman does. I got a whole host of important questions that I want to ask the congressman here today. And we're going to be going over those here in just a moment with him, like the death of the dollar, the flu situation, Afghanistan, the big Republican wins in New Jersey and Virginia, and a lot more. All right. And, of course, we will post this archived up at Infowars.com and prisonplanet.com. Okay, Congressman, got you back quickly. Thank you. Congressman, that is a phone system situation happening, obviously, on their end. So we will try to get Congressman Ron Paul back on right now. In the meantime, we do have Joe Rogan joining us later in studio today, and Laurence J. Kotlikoff. He, of course, is a Boston University professor of economics, to discuss the McClatchy newspaper article that he was quoted in, that we have been discussing. How Goldman Sachs secretly bet on the U.S. housing crash. Okay, maybe three's the charm. Congressman, do we have you?
I'm back. I don't know what happened.
Gremlins in the House switchboard. Okay, you were finishing up with the Fed. On monetary policy, Congressman, you've long talked about the central banks using the dollar to prop up the empire. Now the G20 is discussing abandoning the dollar. what is happening from your research perspective with the dollar right now, and what will happen if the dollar is fully abandoned?
Well, I don't think anybody knows right now. If they just let it go and the dollar's rejected, then it'll be people will have to resort to sound money, and they'd have to resort to commodity money. But as you say, the G20 or the IMF and the world leaders, so to speak, are going to try to replace it. I think the market has replaced the dollar reserve standard. They've gotten rid of that. I don't think they can rebuild on that. So they are rushing around trying to figure out what they'll replace it with. And I think what they'll try to do is come up with a basket of currencies. They even might be tempted to put a little bit of gold in there, but it's not going to suffice. And if they don't have even a little bit of gold, even if they come up with another worldwide fiat standard, I don't think it's going to convey trust. I think they're between the rock and the hard place, and it's not going to be easy for them to push something honest. But one thing for sure, I think there's going to be a lot of chaos, and I think there's going to be a lot more economic problems and more poverty and more, depression in the world just because of this.
Absolutely. So just to be clear, you agree with the big economic headlines we've seen the last month that the dollar as the world reserve currency has been abandoned. China, India, the European Union, the Arabs are now buying more foreign currencies than they are the dollar. They still hold an overall majority of dollars at around 62 to 63%, but they are now abandoning the dollar as reserve currency. A, do you agree with that? B, what will this do to our economy?
Well, it's going to hurt the economy. I wouldn't say it's abandoned, but it's less important all the time. I mean, the fact that they can still have 60% reserves means it's still there. But the market, I look at the market signals, and I think the thing that happened this week was very, very significant. That is when the IMF announces that they're going to dump 200 tons of gold on the market. Well, ordinarily a person would think, and they were hoping, well, a lot of that gold out there, that's going to drive down the price of gold and make all the fiat currencies look better. But what happened? A bank from Asia, India, buys the whole lot, which sent a signal, I think, to the world markets that, in essence, gold has been remonetized. It never gets demonetized, but it has less importance as money when all the countries reject it. But I think this is a major, major signal that the dollar is getting closer, it's on its last legs, and gold is getting more important. And as the Chinese buy less and less, they have already started buying gold, and they don't want to buy too much too fast and, shoot the price up, too quickly. But I think that's coming. I think the gold price is destined to go a lot higher, and the dollar is going to go a lot lower. And they cannot dethrone gold. They can disrupt and play these games for a long, long time. But in many ways, this is very, very good because it tells us that the governments no longer can get away with just printing money to finance their schemes. And it's their schemes that are so damaging to us, whether it's the welfare or the warfare, it all hurts the people because they have to pay the bills. So some of these things are good signals, although it means that we have to be concerned about the chaos that might erupt.
Absolutely. Congressman, the private central banks, as you know, are financing the Copenhagen Treaty. I have the treaty here in front of me, all 200 pages of the Framework Convention on Climate Change. It states, as Ban Ki-moon wrote last week in the New York Times, that this is global governance and that select groups of private interest are going to be able to decide who can have a factory, who can have a business. They can decide who's going to get the carbon credits. This scheme was designed by Ken Lay, as Congress has reported. The Senate committee has now approved the climate bill, as Reuters reports. If our economy under globalization and NAFTA and GATT is already sputtering, what's going to happen if we allow the very same central banks to create this new derivative system?
Well, if it works, it'll work for a short while, and companies like Goldman Sachs and a few others will rip us off, and they'll, get even more wealth. But it cannot help the economy. It has to hurt the economy, and it can't possibly help the environment because they're totally off track on that. It might turn out to be one of the biggest hoaxes of all history, this whole global warming terrorism that they've been using. So we'll have to just wait and see, but it cannot be helpful. It's going to hurt everybody.
What's the inside baseball word in Congress? Dianne Feinstein and Barbara Boxer say they're going to be able to pass it this year or next year. But more and more evidence on the ground shows that we're going to be able to beat the House and Senate version of the climate bill that is meant to tie into the Copenhagen UN takeover.